Is it live? What? They popped up live really quick. What's happening, everybody? Hope everybody's having a fantastic, whatever day you're watching this. You know, it's like the first week or so into January in beautiful Southeast Texas. It's, I don't know, a typical 80 degrees down here. What is the deal? Raining, everything's wet. Anyway, hope everybody's having a fantastic, you know, the rest. EV chat. So, there's a lot of talk right now, a lot of movement in the EV world. We don't really have a lot to talk about in terms of internal combustion engine these days. What with Dodge basically not giving us anything to talk about. I mean, yeah, there's a little bit of chitter chatter with the Hurricane Inline 6, but the reality is that there's just really nothing to talk about when it comes to an actual car that's being released with the Hurricane Inline 6. Nothing exciting. Anyway, Gary's in saying, what's up? Ryan is in. What's up, Ryan? So anyway, I recently put out into the world, I guess. So weird to say it like that. Anyway, video basically just kind of walking through that announcement that Dodge made about the power output of the Banshee. And you had the direct connection power upgrades, which are basically, and I don't really go over too much detail in this video, by the way, guys. It's just kind of an overview, but the power upgrades are basically 10% on either side for the 340 and the 440 kilowatt varieties of the Banshee, but nothing was really talked about as far as what the maximum power output was going to be for the top trim level. In other words, the Hellcat version of the Banshee, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, where I'm going with that is, in the video, I kind of walked through some things. There is a car that Stellantis's brand Maserati is putting out, the Gran Turismo Folgore, which is in essence running on the same, or what is presumed to be the same 800 volt system that the Banshee was kind of teased to have. And that was really all that you had. There are some folks that were taking that 800 volts and they were getting a little bit twisted, only because it's a coincidence of the math that that it was going to be in essence an 800 kilowatt system, which would be basically close to 1200 horsepower. Just in this scenario, that's kind of the way that it works out. The Folgore is a 1200 horsepower unit. But it's got some caveats that you have to work around. So anyway, namely that whole 1200 horsepower power output is not available all the time, or at least it's not available in long runs. It's only available in short sprints. So anyway, there's that to consider. I also put out a quick video about the Ram Revolution. And what I wanted to do is that just kind of give you guys some behind the scenes as far as that particular video. In that video, this is no joke, I had like, I'll put together something in my head and I'm looking at the pictures and I'm thinking to myself and I'm, you know, kind of going back and forth as far as what I'm going to say in a video. But most of my stuff is very off the cuff. I don't script anything. I may have notes, but that's really about it. Placekeepers. All of my stuff is just real conversational. And the funny thing in that video is when I say the Ram Avalanche, the reason why I literally was saying Avalanche and caught myself and just rolled with it was because if you look at the truck and look at the functionality, it's basically an Avalanche just with electric motors. So anyway, there's that. But getting back to the whole thing, the video for the Banshee power level thing, I don't know what happened with that one. I was having a really bad writer's block and I would try to just say something and just the wrong thing would come out every single time. So anyway, a little bit of background, a little bit of behind the scenes, always kind of fun to share that with you guys while we're visiting. So the EVs, getting back to it, the Banshee with 340 and 440 kilowatts, it's pretty easy to get to what you need to, you know, understand when we talk about the power outputs. Kilowatts are going to be the new horsepower equivalents. The easy way to remember this is 1.34 is what you multiply kilowatts basically to get the horsepower number. And just remember that kilowatts are 3/4 of horsepower. So it's kind of a neat little mind remembering trick, if you will, that the kilowatts will always be 3/4 or 75% of the actual horsepower figure. So in other words, that's just kind of an easy way to do the math. But to that point, direct connection, again, those power bumps are roughly 10% per side. And what are we really looking at for the Banshee? And what I was basically talking about in that video was that Gran Turismo Folgore with the 1200 horsepower. It's an 800 volt system, but it's acting like its batteries are all, it's like two big batteries that are run in series to get the 800 volts, which is one of the reasons why the Folgore's range is only like 260 or 280 miles with that roughly 118 kilowatt. It's really, I should say roughly 120. It's 118 is what they're advertising, kilowatt battery pack. But it's only got about 60% of the range of a Tesla Plaid, which is running on a 400 kilowatt system with about the same size battery pack at 100 kilowatts. So it's just something to keep in mind. If all the cars are going to have a 100 kilowatt battery pack, then you will have Sovereign. Really? I don't know that. Wow, thanks for sharing. Hang on a second. Yeah, no, when you put batteries in series, you increase the voltage. So if you have two 12 volts, you have 24 volts, but you keep the same amp hours. If you run them in parallel, you keep your voltage, but you double your amp hours. That's the sleight of hand way of saying that if you've got an 800 volt system, you're going to have half of the range, if you will. So there's some gamesmanship going on here is really what I'm trying to inform you guys of. Yes, you'll have the power available. However, you won't have it for very long. They're showing the power delivery for the Folgore in Chris, no. Okay, Chris, okay, hold on. I'm going to get to this just a second. Chris, you're going to love this. I'm glad you said that. So, but they're giving you guys the power outputs. The Folgore can produce 1200 horsepower, but it's for a limited amount of time, probably limited by the speed controller and what it can handle in terms of load, with a roughly 750 continuous power availability, where the Plaid doesn't have that limitation so far as I can tell. Now, Chris says, sounds like you're buying an electric Banshee. Brother, you couldn't be further from it. So I was talking to the little lady, and I love my wife so much, she cracks me up. So she was asking, or I was telling her about the electric Ram, the EV Ram, the Revolution. And we were kind of talking about that and the Banshee. And she is adamantly against any electric vehicle. And her idea with the electric vehicle is that she doesn't get anything out of it. Anything can be fast. Everything feels fast, regardless of where you come from. Her thing is, and we're talking about EVs, but her thing is she wants to be able to feel the engine. She wants to smell gas in her hair. She wants the entire experience. And that anything else for her is, it's superfluous. It's not going to add anything to her experience or her fun. Not to mention the fact that EVs have got a dirty little problem. And that is when they're charging, if there's an issue with the battery while it's charging, if there's an issue with the charger, more to the point, while it's charging and somehow or another it damages the battery, that battery can basically begin its trip down an exothermic chain reaction that ends in things burning to the ground, not only the car, but the structure that's surrounding it. So no, as a matter of fact, I've been told to not show up at the house with an EV, something that we kind of agree on anyway, but she's saying, hell no, you're not getting an EV. And you know what? I got to tell you something. I'm right there with you. And by the way, yeah, Ryan said no. B's holding out for a new conquest. I'm holding out for a new stealth or hell the wraith. Anything, yeah. I'm kind of there too. If there is that car that they're going to produce, I'm in. I'm all in. You guys, I'll be the first one to tell you when I put a deposit on the car. But I got to tell y'all something, man. I cannot get behind the EV thing. I am concerned with EVs. And it's not just my wife that is obviously a huge influence for me, but we share the same train of thought. But I know about the EV and fire thing, not only from her, but from my dad. My dad works at a closed circuit track. And whenever the EVs catch on fire, they wheel them off into the middle of a field and just let them burn to the ground. I mean, there's nothing that you can do to stop the fire. So that kind of gives you an idea. I mean, I've got firsthand accounts of these things basically just melting into Mother Earth. So, Sarah's saying Toyota's partner with Yamaha to create a hydrogen combustible engine. It would sound almost like an internal combustion engine, and it would fuel up about as fast as an internal combustion engine. The problem with hydrogen, and this is a big issue with hydrogen, is just the storage of the stuff. The only way you can realistically store hydrogen in the amounts that it takes to get a decent range out of an internal combustion engine, and this has been done a long time ago, guys. Actually, there's several problems with hydrogen. The first is, we're going to start from the back and move forward. You've got your hydrogen, but hydrogen gas, you have to store basically the internal cubic foot capacity of a small van would be needed to carry enough hydrogen to give you enough fuel to have a normal range, say 300 miles out of a car. That's just how it works. That's how the packaging of that particular gas works. If you have liquid hydrogen, obviously that would be much, much better. And you could reduce the size of the vessel that you need to carry the gas. The problem is that liquid hydrogen has to be refrigerated and highly pressurized to get to a liquid state. So what happens is you compress the hydrogen in a pressure vessel, and over time, it will eventually heat up. You cool it and pressurize it, and then at some point, it needs to expand, and then you have to off-gas that particular pressure vessel. That's just how this stuff works. And hydrogen, being such an extremely small molecule, can actually pass through the walls of the vessels that are containing it. It's just like having a helium balloon. If you fill up a helium balloon, it doesn't stay inflated forever. The helium is able to permeate the actual vessel that's holding it. Well, the same thing can happen with hydrogen. So you have off-gassing, you have permeation, you've got literal size constraints of the vehicle itself if you're talking about the gas, all kinds of problems with hydrogen as a fuel. But it's kind of funny though. Okay, so you've got that to consider on the very back end from a practical standpoint. The other side of it is, how much power does it make to actually make hydrogen, and how do you derive hydrogen? Well, a lot of folks would say, well, you can get that by electrolysis with water. Well, that's not a very efficient way to extract hydrogen. What you want to do is extract hydrogen from a hydrocarbon. Well, now we're talking about fossil fuels again, and that's how most hydrogen is derived. Most of the time it's extracted and it's removed from, distilled, I should say, from hydrocarbons. So you're still using natural gas or some other type of a fossil fuel to make the hydrogen. So it's not a very efficient use of energy the way that gasoline is. And by the way, from 1 gallon of crude oil, you get more than 1 gallon's worth of fuel because of the distillation process. So Gasoline's an incredibly efficient use of the resource. Hydrogen is extremely inefficient, an extremely inefficient use of the resource when you look at miles driven versus yield of combustible fuel out of the actual resource. And then, yeah, Sovereign's talking about fusion. Yeah, for sure. I mean, if they can make fusion work, then that's even better from a nuclear power plant point of view. It's not the fusion that's hard. It's the containment of the fusion. It's not the fusion reaction that's tough. It's the containment of the fusion reaction that seems to be a little bit problematic. It's that uncontrollable chain reaction that creates weapons. So, but yeah, they recently were able to figure out how to control at least a small portion of fusion. So that could be a huge deal for us. But getting back to it, the EV thing, it's always kind of an interesting topic, if you will, because there's so many tricks of the trade when you're looking at an EV power plant, and just saying that you have a higher voltage is not to say that you will be able to make more power necessarily in the long run. But presumably it does mean that you will have a very powerful and potentially affordable power plant, only because of economies of scale. And as more EVs are made, the more that you will have the ability to potentially, again, take advantage of economies of scale. In other words, they're making more, technology gets cheaper, products get cheaper. Maybe some of that cost savings can start to waterfall. But the problem with even saying that, the problem with even mentioning that, is that it hasn't happened yet. One of the problems that come with that statement is the fact that every single one of these EVs is extremely expensive. All of them, and they all are problematic. Again, let's go down the list of some of these cars. You've got the Hummer EV, which again, like I said in that video, it's leaving folks stranded. There's some issues with technology there that is leaving folks incapable of actually using their vehicle. But an amazing vehicle nonetheless from a driver's point of view, just not an amazing vehicle from an ownership point of view, which is kind of the overarching theme when it comes to electrical vehicles at this stage of the game. You've got the electric truck, the Lightning. You've got a couple of different battery sizes that you can go with that, but unfortunately, guys are finding out, as this should come as no surprise, by the way, that range is affected by the load that you put on the thing. But the problem is that the range is significantly affected by the load. And again, these are trucks. They've got to be able to do truck things. And one of the things that trucks have to do is they have to be affordable. I mean, folks that want a pickup truck need to be able to buy a pickup truck. It shouldn't be a luxury item either. I mean, truck's a truck. You should use it as a work implement. It should be a tool of the trade, not necessarily a status symbol, which is where I kind of do start to part ways with the logic of some of these EVs. Coming into this conversation, you might think, okay, well, the EV, if you're not doing a lot of work with it, it could be kind of a neat use of the technology. Again, the only party trick that the EV has is that it's really quick in a straight line. And once you grow tired of that, well, you'll end up doing what a lot of folks have done with these EVs. They end up selling them. They get rid of them, sell them down the line. A lot of folks just really aren't all that happy with them. And there's another reason why they're not all that happy with them. It's January as I'm making this video, and in more sane parts of the world, it's cold. In the Northern Hemisphere, this is like when it's really cold. And the problem with EVs when it's really cold is that their range is decreased. And a lot of that has to do with heater usage. I mean, it takes a lot of power to make an interior of a car hot. And again, between that, a drop in battery efficiencies, there are things that lend themselves against the EV during this time of year. And so what I try to say when, somebody is really driving home the EV narrative, it's like, well, listen, you're asking me to have a whole lot of compromises for one little party trick, and that's it. So yeah, not really all that interested in the EVs at this stage of the game. And oh, by the way, let's talk about the cost again. Hummer EV, significant six-figure price tag for that. The Ford Lightning is another significant six-figure price tag on top of that. Dealer add tag that they're throwing on there is what's pushing it high. That Folgore that I was mentioning in that video, that car is, I think it was slated to be somewhere around $170,000, which tells me that, with the Maserati having a kind of a premium, or at least a kind of a hoity-toity nameplate, the Dodge, instead of being 170 with the Plaid coming in at like 160, maybe the Dodge checks in at $120,000. Which for any of you guys with super stocks should sound real familiar in terms of how much the cars cost. At least for that top tier trim level that we were talking about. So anyway, we'll have to see. It's one of those things where we don't know enough yet, and there's not enough good news coming from Dodge to talk about really anything else when it comes to internal combustion stuff. So, let's see. Oh, Ryan said he'd like to see a Julia-based platform in the coupe, call it Scamp Fury, and then use the HO Hurricane engine. So the thing is, what I was hoping, this is, hope against hope. I was hoping that the Hurricane-based vehicle, if they come out with one, would basically be its own platform. It would be like, kind of in the same guise as, and I keep bringing up the old Conquest, only because I will always have a little bit of a crush on that car. But the Conquest was such a neat car; it would fit perfectly with a with a competitive narrative with the Z car and with the Supra. How cool would that be? And it would be a great anti-Mustang. You cannot beat the Mustang. There is one area where you cannot beat the Mustang, and that is at being a Mustang. Camaro tried and failed gloriously. And it's one of the reasons why the Challenger did so well. It was not playing in the Mustang's field. But now that obviously the Challenger is going away, the Mustang does have a 4-cylinder turbo variant, although I don't ever see them really driving that narrative too far. Maybe someday Mustang has a V6 turbo. I'm shocked that they don't have an offering now, to be honest. And although Mustang is staying very true to their hot rod roots, others are changing. And, kudos to Ford for sticking out the V8, or sticking with the V8 and doing really well with it. But this Conquest, or this Starion, and I'll just keep saying that just because if I keep putting it out there, maybe it'll happen. That would be an awesome car. And you got to remember that, again, it would operate as an anti-Mustang. Inline 6 turbo versus V8. Kind of a cool ring to it. And it has kind of a throwback ring to it. At least in one respect. Remember this little car called the Supra? Not the new one, but the Mark IV. That car with a 3-liter inline 6 with the turbo was going up against Vipers, Corvettes, supercharged modified Mustangs, and doing rather well against them. Well, we've got the Supra now doing that. We've got the Z car with the V6 turbo. Wouldn't it be neat if we had the Conquest to fall back on? We can only hope, or at least wish for something like that. Ryan saying, sorry, I know it's an EV chat. I just can't get behind it. To me, it has no soul. Maybe we should explore ethanol more. Yeah, that's one of the things that kind of was throwing me off is why isn't that ethanol isn't explored more? I don't know if it's a capacity thing or what, but Brazil seems to do a pretty good job with ethanol, considering that most of their cars run on E85 or ethanol. Oh, Ryan saying he hadn't heard anything about the EV Wrangler. Are the reviews good or no? Well, this is the thing. I haven't seen any review that doesn't sound biased, but I have seen one in a parking lot. At least my wife and I did. And I can tell you that her review of that was not too favorable. Oh, Sovereign saying exactly that's where the internal combustion engines vehicles rule over EVs. It's more friendly to the masses. Yeah, well, it's a practical answer for the masses. I mean, you know, I tell you what, if you had, let me say this, if you had to buy an EV, like you had to have an EV, but you live in an apartment, how are you going to charge it? If you have an EV, it's almost a prerequisite that you live in a house so that you can charge the thing in a house. Because I can tell you this, you ain't going to be running an extension cord out to your EV to charge it overnight. First of all, it's a real easy way to wake up in the morning with a cut up extension cord. I mean, I'm telling you, there's some malicious folks out there. And if you leave your car strapped to an EV charger, yeah, there's a good chance that you're going to come out and see some damage done to your vehicle if you forgot to move the thing, if you only have a few chargers and somebody's got to have their car on that charger. That's a bad look. And I'm telling you, it's the recipe for a little bit of the calamity. I can tell you that. Sorry that TFL paid $115 for their Hummer EV. That's quite a bit. Car saying, hey, I'd like to see how fast these truck EVs batteries tucker out, hauling max rated capacity, as well as you mentioned in the cold climates. Listen, I mean, we've already seen what happens to the Lightning. You know, Who's Garage, you guys have all seen that video where it hemorrhages range. All EVs hemorrhage range in cold air, cold climates. But I'm here to tell you that is even exacerbated by putting the load on the vehicle for something that it's just supposed to do. And this is what really kind of, like, it's a dangerous thing in my opinion. How are you going to put somebody in a situation where if you're towing a trailer, you really do have to plan your route because of the just in case. If you get to a point where you're stuck in traffic, if you get to a point where you're on the highway, you get hit with a headwind, something like that. In an internal combustion engine vehicle, you're just like, oh, bummer, I got to put, you know, another $30 in gas in this thing and move on. In an EV, that's a whole different thing. I mean, you could end up being stranded because you're trying to just use the vehicle as it was intended, as a truck. And that's a big problem for me. Michael's saying, I know nobody would buy it, but they should make a minivan with a little motor and a large battery so it goes 1,000 miles, but slow as hell and very efficient. Or does that make too much sense? So when the whole EV thing really first hit, one of the funny things is that what people don't know is that people have been making their own EVs for a long time. When I was a kid, and I don't know why this is, okay, but guys would get old, beat up Ford Rangers, S10s, Nissan pickups. You would never see them do it to a Toyota, not that I could remember. But anyway, they would pull the motor out of the mini truck and they would put the batteries and the electric motor and the drive control out of an electric forklift. And you would see these guys buzz around. Being in Austin and in and around Austin, you would see these things every once in a while. And to your point, it was one of those things where they kind of just, they always just had a charge. You'd plug them in and they would charge overnight and you just drive it. Didn't have much of a range, maybe 40 miles. The things would only go maybe 45 miles an hour. But the idea behind it was that you never had to pay for gas and it was a fun engineering experiment. Well, here's the thing. With modern batteries and modern motor technology, I'm not exactly sure why they don't put a 100 kilowatt battery in something small with a small motor. It really would get obnoxious range in that configuration. And to be able to answer your question, I don't know, maybe because the batteries themselves are so expensive. Keeping in mind, I don't know what the actual percentage is, but I'm sure it's somewhere around 25 to 30% of the vehicle's cost is just the battery itself. And that's why you see products like the Leaf, obviously size constraints are in play here too, but they only have 45 to 60 kilowatt batteries. So, which is kind of funny when you think about it, because the new Banshee with the hot rod platform on 800 volts is going to act like other larger EVs with a 60 kilowatt battery. That's how they're going to act, even with the larger battery, because you've got a finite amount of space for a battery. To get voltage out of it, you got to do one of two things: double the size of the battery, or run it in series. The same size battery, you have to run it, basically split it in half and run it in series. That halves your total capacity. Kind of interesting. Sovereign saying, honestly, we need better batteries. Yeah, we do. That's the big part. Saying, hit that like and subscribe. Sovereign saying, Super was crazy. Yep. Sovereign saying, you saw Lucid. Those are pretty cool. Yeah, temperatures, yeah, for any of the lithium-based product, any battery in general, it's just a chemical reaction. You heat it up, they react more quickly. You cool them off, they don't react as quickly. You don't want to freeze them. That's exactly right. Ryan said, I think ethanol would be the best we could do. Also, make the older classics run on it, so we would really lose our cars. To me, it would be easier and cheaper to switch to ethanol or E85. Yeah, anything that you do in that respect is obviously a good thing. And again, it's not like it's been too hard for the folks in Brazil to make that change. So the only issue with ethanol, or you can do that in warmer climates though, ethanol is really hard to light off when it's cold. Which is why you see a lot of guys on E85 that have hell with cold starts. It just kind of comes with the territory. A good compromise on that is to have a twin fuel system, fire it up on gasoline, and then switch over to the ethanol once the car warms up. Chris saying, in the case of commuter vehicles, front-wheel drive with rear wheels doubling as all-wheel drive assist and spinning a generator charging the batteries, probably wouldn't buy one if given the choice, though. Well, the problem is that the rear wheel spinning a generator would be a net negative in terms of range. And the reason for that is basically it's, law of thermodynamics. You don't have the ability to get more power out of a system than you are putting into it. The only thing that does that really is nuclear fusion. And that's working with the strong force on the nuclear level of fusion. But the reality is that if you were to do that, the drag of the generator would overcome the power that you were getting out of it. So this kind of is what it is. But the reality is, if you have any kind of EV, your issue is always going to be how do you best regenerate? How do you best collect the power that thing is going to need moving forward, like from a regen point of view? And all EVs have some levels of regen, and that's the part that works. You're turning momentum. You're basically at that point, because any electric motor can be turned into a generator. And when you create that system, or when you create that scenario, I should say, you're just using momentum to generate the electricity. So it works. And the thing that bothers me the most about the whole EV argument is there are finite resources for batteries. There are finite resources in terms of capacity for the refurbishment and the recycling of the batteries that go into making those particular products. And so you got to be careful when you're talking about EVs, taking the risks and everything else involved with an EV versus a gas engine. I'm not sure a lot of folks are going to be too quick to jump on an EV bandwagon when it means that they've got to spend 20, 30% more on one of those cars. Gary, thank you very much. Saying great dialogue and discussion tonight. Thank you, my friend. I appreciate the support. I need to get my glasses of reading on over here. Oh, everything is now very clear. But thank you very much, Gary. Summer saying, Gary with the super chat. Thank you, buddy. Ryan saying you cannot create energy, you can only transfer it. Very accurate. Yes, correct. I was saying, so what you're saying, electric cars are cold-blooded rattlesnake. I tell you what, and then Ryan saying more like a fuzzy stick of dynamite. In a way, it kind of is. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of drawbacks to EVs that folks don't realize and don't understand until they get their hands on one. And to be honest with you, there's so many things about the EV that only lend itself to those that have houses and those that have houses that can house a charger that is sufficient enough to give you enough range in an acceptable amount of time, in this case, maybe overnight, when you're charging your vehicle to collect your mileage back. And driving the thing down to what would in essence be like, say, a 10% charge. I mean, a lot of these cars with a household charger may need 24 hours to get a full charge out of the thing. In other words, to go from 10% to, say, 90% capacity. That's a real issue that a lot of folks have. So, in fact, which car was I looking at? I cannot remember right now which car I was looking at. But I think of one of the Tesla variants. And if you were to just plug the car in and let the car's internal charger thing do its thing, in a regular United States 110 outlet, it would take you 2 days, which 48 hours to charge the thing. And if you were to plug it into just a regular 220 volt with the I forget how it all worked out. Anyway, long story short, you had to have a significant level of charging, like the contraption that you have had to be a legit charging thing to allow you to be able to charge the thing from a low charge level to a high charge level in a reasonable amount of time. And so that's kind of a weird thing for me. One of the big, I don't know how you say this, one of the big selling points, if you will, on an EV is, well, you don't have to go to the gas station. You just get home, plug the car in, you wake up, you unplug it, and you go on about your business. Well, that's cool and all, but how many charging cycles can that battery take? It's the first question that I have. And two, at what point is it not a good idea to charge the battery? In other words, if it's only down to like 75% capacity, is it cool to charge it to 100%? Or should you wait till it gets to 50%? Or is that even a good idea? Can I just charge the thing and use it like my phone? Like, I don't ever think about that type of a scenario with my phone. If I just have it sitting there, I plug it in. So there's a lot of weird, in fact, that reminds me, I got to plug this thing in because it's starting to croak over here. Hold please. There we go. But there's just so many questions that I don't ever seem to be able to get answered when it comes to that stuff. Um, so I'm saying all the while a 20-year-old Toyota with internal combustion engine is still going without worrying about the battery. Yeah, that's true. Um, Ryan saying summer with the winning point of the argument. Yeah. Well, and that brings up another good point. We talked about this before with used EVs. And my take on used EVs, I can only go, guys, I can only go off of my own experience. But you guys, some of you guys that are frequent on the live show, you know the story about that used Tesla that I parked next to. I mean, dude, it was so sad. I mean, you just can't help, and you're looking right down, looking into this car. It was trashed out. I mean, you could tell they had kids, and I think there was like Cheerios and something all over the place. It was, or Fruit Loops is what it may have been. I don't know. Anyway, it was just gross on the inside of this car. This was somebody's like status rig, right? I mean, this is something they were showing up and like, I've got a Tesla. But the problem is they get rid of it later on or whatever. Is the battery life still good in this thing? At what point are other components going to start to fail with this car? And I feel like that about every other EV. It's some kind of a weird thing with me in EVs, but it feels like it's like that hot chick that would always turn her nose up at you and kind of blow you off. And then you see her later on and she's been kind of used up, right? And you could kind of just tell by looking at her that she had a lot of sadness in her eyes, and like she smells funny, like baby vomit. Like that's that used Tesla to me. It's that it once could have been hot, could have been successful, but ended up not going that way for her, and by some weird twist of karma, she's got a kid with an overactive regurgitation issue. Like that's kind of how I see used EVs, and I cannot get that out of my head for whatever reason that there is. So that's kind of really where I'm at with the used EV market. It just feels like, I just feel dirty for some reason, and I don't understand why that is. But it's Michael. Thank you very much, man. I appreciate that. But it's one of those. We didn't have a question, but I really do appreciate the support, man. Thank you. Ryan said, I think I hate to say it, all the people I see with EVs are the people that don't take care of their cars, don't check oil and such. Yeah, well, that's true. Ken saying EVs are trendy like the way tribal tattoos were in the 90s. I know a lot of people with tribal tattoos. I am ink free, but I do know of a lot of dudes and a lot of girls too with a lot of tribal. Sorry, saying Michael Buteau with the Andy J. Yes, thank you very much, Michael. I do appreciate that, man. Thank you. You and Gary, guys. Thanks a ton, fellas. But yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy because I don't feel any different. If I saw a used Hummer EV, it would just be a bigger version of the same feeling. I guess that's just how it is right now for me. And maybe that's another reason why I just can't get worked up over the new Banshee. I can't get over the fact that, well, there's this too. And this is a point that I don't think anybody has made yet when it comes to the Banshee. The Banshee's getting a whole lot of press, but have we already forgotten about the 7th car that hasn't been released yet by Dodge, that last call edition? Isn't it supposed to have 1,000 horsepower too? I thought that is that still relevant? Is that still like a thing? Is it even still important to talk about that car at all? I mean, isn't this the 7th car that had blown up 7 motors on the 7th day of the 7th month? Is that really where this is going to end up going? First, y'all know that I just know in my heart of hearts that blowing up 7 motors is bullshit. But the other side to this is, but the Banshee's getting the pub. The Banshee is getting the love. And this soon-to-be last call car, last of the what made Dodge great, what made Dodge what they are today cars, yeah, it's not there yet. It's not out. And oh yeah, sorry, yeah, Racer X's video. Well, we don't know what it is. It's all speculation. We can maybe think that it's going to be a 426, but I don't know. We don't know. Nobody knows what it's going to be. Only Dodge knows. And the problem is getting 1,000 horsepower. Well, it ain't going to be a 426 because the cars that they're able to extract 1,000 horsepower of now, I mean, does it even matter what the displacement is? They keep blowing the thing up. And that's something else. There's no way a calibration engineer can blow up one of those engines. Not with the aftermarket making 6.2 liter engines hold together at 1,000 horsepower reliably, easily, and long term, by the way. A 7 liter can get there just as easily. So, Ryan saying, oh, Bubba from the TP with the beer gut and that rolled over the belt that used to be a high school football star. That's the Hummer EV. Yeah, kind of. I mean, and the thing is that when you look at what the EV has to offer, it's all shrouded in smug. And that's the thing that kills it for me. And I'm a big fan of EV technology. You know, I was first on point to say, look, if I can get my hands on one of these things, I would love to be able to dive into a tune on one of these cars, mainly because it's all just based around torque management. But there's going to be even more that comes to that. But you get the idea. It's one of the thoughts that you think, okay, man, listen, this is just another power plant for me to try to figure out how to make go faster. And, well, the reality is that maybe there's just too many downsides to it. There's maybe an ethical downside to it with the way that they have to extract minerals for these batteries. Look into that when you have time, but there's maybe that side of the argument that could keep some folks. I don't know. Ryan saying they blew them up on purpose to make a story of if it did blow up. Honestly, I don't think that there's engines that blew up. I think that that is a story. I think it's a tall tale. And I think that it is more in line with the idea that they're trying to build a backstory for this thing. They're trying to build it's legend building, if you will. The reality is that there's no calibration engineer on the planet worth his salt that would be scattering 7 engines. I want you to think about that. It doesn't work like that. It just simply doesn't. It's fiction for the sake of fiction. It's reading for entertainment. Okay. That's all that is. Okay. That's Goldilocks. That's, Little Boy Blue or whatever. That's all it is. It's an attempt to add to the narrative of the car. And it is an unnecessary step that they're taking to try to extract as much feels points and as much dollar bills from anybody that might be thinking about buying that thing. So for me, I look at stories like that. I look at fiction like that as just another black eye on Dodge, in that, again, it's unnecessary. It actually makes them look really bad. It's not funny. It's not, man, it's just blowing motors up. Really? You're blowing motors up. That doesn't make me feel too good about buying these direct connection calibration and pulley packages for Hellcats and Red Eyes. Yeah, I really don't want, if that's the same calibration engineer that's putting the blowing up motors, that's putting those direct connection kits together, you think I'm going to be buying any of that? See, this is, again, this is an issue for me. It's not funny. It's a distraction more than anything else, a distraction from the fact they're probably not able to get the thing to pass emissions, either due to actual emissions or component protection concerns. The catalytic converter protection is what I'm talking about here. But now it puts me into thinking, okay, well, you guys just don't know what the hell you're doing. We've been making these cars make over 1,000 horsepower with 6.2 liters with just a pulley change and a fuel change since 2015. So that's the issue that we're finding, is that the fiction building is completely unnecessary. But let me get back to you guys. Let's see. Gary's saying, agreed. Ryan's saying, I understand. New toy, but when that toy has no soul like Chucky. No kidding. Yeah, a lot of guys don't like the idea of the EV primarily because there's just no theater to it. You know, it's the theater that gives the car the soul, the sound, the smell, just the existence of something that has to breathe and consume fuel. I mean, again, it means different things to different people, but again, I can tell you, my wife ain't having it. Chris said, EV for commuter vehicles, sure, but for performance vehicles and pickup trucks, hell no. Yeah, for sure not for trucks. It's already proven to be not the right technology, at least not now for that type of a vehicle, for that application. Summer saying EVs are cool in a way, but we're really not ready for them. Yeah, the technology, infrastructure, all of that is just not there. I'm saying at work, random channel surfing. Thank you for hanging out, Valiant. Gary saying, I'm happy with my Scat Pack wide body. Good car, fun car. Valiant saying, get rid of all start-stop systems. Why does that exist? I mean, what in the who, why? There is no, look, nowhere ever is that a good thing. I'm sorry. That's the first thing I wanted to defeat on my new truck was the start stop thing. There is no way that that's a good thing. The overriding narrative of that is, well, if you have so many stops and each stop is 90 seconds, then you'll save a grand total of, and I think it was 3 ounces of fuel or something like that per stop or something like that, which I didn't quite, that number doesn't sound right. Because let me show you what 3 ounces, where is it? Where is it? I got one around here somewhere. Anyway, 3 ounces isn't much. All right. And I don't know if this was over like the course of an entire day's worth of driving or something like that, but well, over time that adds up. Get out of here. Okay. No, it doesn't add up. 3 ounces. If you save 3 ounces a day, there's 64 ounces in a gallon, right? So if you had, let me think about this. Somebody get their calculator out. If you save 3 ounces a day, call it 10 ounces a day for crying out loud. It would take you a week to save a gallon of gas, right? So it would take you a week to save a gallon of gas. And that gallon of gas is going to cost you $3. You're looking at $12 a month. And that's if it saved you 10, okay? So that'd be $12 a month. Now you take your $12 and divide it by 3. That would be $4. So you're trying to make a big stink about a savings of $4 per month for start-stop technology? It's a game changer. No, it's not. What's a game changer is the fact that people will believe the bullshit that they're told. And where was I? I read a quote somewhere. It's harder to explain to somebody how they've been screwed over than it is to screw them over. It's got to be, it's something along those lines. It should really be like a law of physics. But anyway, let me get back to you guys. Ryan saying, living in the moment. We would say, oh, Racer X posted video of the confirmation of the 46 horse 5.0, and Dodge is making 5.0s now. So one of the things that, you know, and I was talking about the new Mustang, you know, kind of as an aside, and this is what you need to understand about the new Mustang. And I really should do a standalone video on this. But the Mustang is now a horsepower leader in the naturally aspirated hot rod segment. It's not Dodge anymore. And it's not Dodge anymore needs to resonate with you if you're a Dodge fan, because Dodge has been the horsepower leader since they showed up with the 6.1, followed by the 6.4. And no other Mustang that was a standard GT had power to compete with the 392. Now, I understand about the GT 350, Mach 1, whatever, but that's not where I'm going with this. A standard Scat Pack made more horsepower than a standard Mustang GT, not a 65,000 variety. So when you look at it from that perspective, one of the things that you need to understand and should start understanding relatively quickly is that Ford has now put Dodge in their rearview mirror. And that's a thing. I mean, to come up and go, oh, well, with this new exhaust system, you get 486 horsepower. Let me tell you how important that 1 horsepower is. It means that, well, not only is Dodge not the horsepower leader anymore, but now Ford is exiting the segment. Well, let me rephrase that. Ford is entering an era where Dodge has exited a segment, where Chevrolet has exited a segment, and Ford could have just kept doing what they were doing. Just didn't stop what they were up to, just cruised on into this new era of them being the only one with the V8. But no, they stepped their game up and left with a resounding knockout punch by upping the ante and cracking Dodge right where it hurts, which is right in their power figures. Can't argue torque. Horsepower is what sells cars, fellas. So with that in mind, does it surprise you? I mean, Ford's been doing this for, well, forever in a way. Remember, it was Ford that gave us the Mustang when we didn't ever even have a Challenger in the thoughts or anything in anybody's mind. And there also wasn't a Camaro. When there wasn't a Camaro, wasn't a Challenger, there was a Mustang. And when there wasn't a Hellcat, before anything had a supercharger, Ford was doing it. Beginning with the Lightning into the Terminator Cobra. But the more important car in my mind is the GT500. That car was making big block power, 500 horsepower, 500 pound-feet of torque when there was no competition. Little wonder how Ford, entering this new era, did it and advanced the power figure even more. Good on Ford. It's a very, very good look for Ford too, by the way. Wolf saying 128, bro. Summers, that look on your face is priceless. Wolf saying start stop makes sense in Florida where you literally don't move for 5+ minutes per light cycle. Man, I tell you what, maybe it does. I don't know. But if I'm in Florida, one of the problems I'm going to have is during the summertime, start stop means that I don't have air conditioning. And how do I know? Well, my Ram had start stop and I defeated it. But yeah, the Ram's got start stop. And I'm telling you, it's no fun when you're sitting there and you're like, it's starting to get hot in this thing. This kind of sucks. So I'm saying, not going to lie, I'm with Mopar, but the Mustang Dark Horse, yeah, it's nice. Gary's not liking the path that Dodge is on. Someone's saying, yeah, they're taking the crown. Yeah, the Ford's taking the crown, and they're doing it. The thing is that Ford is doing it, and it's doing it in a really sinister way, which is one of the reasons why I'm kind of like, I like you, Ford. You see, Ford is taking the crown, and they're running the score up on Dodge. Dirty pool, but good work if you can get it. BB saying regular folks can buy a Mustang GT. Rich people are the target for EVs. Man, you got to have some extra scratch to rub together to be able to pick up one of these EVs, guys. Listen, yeah, and then some. Some of these EVs are so expensive. You can't say, oh, well, you save money on gas. What, you think electricity is free? Try not paying your light bill and see what happens. Sorry, said true. Ford also stepped up to the plate, tackled Ferrari. Yes, they did. Donnie's saying, hey, B, about to throw a tire on my Hellcat, trying to decide if it makes sense to do a 315 50-17 over a 305 45-17. It's got the 262s, but I'm planning for a 309. I'm worried about effective gear ratio. Don't worry about it. 305 45-17 is what most of us run with the 309s. And in fact, that's what's on those tires in the back, right over there. So yeah, 305 45-17. And we've been running 309s in our cars for years and years and years now. So don't worry about it. You will be good. And we've run that size tire on 1,000 horsepower cars too, gone mid-9s with it. No issues. Gary said, I blame this on the Stellantis takeover. True that. No, I say I'm mostly 8th mile, if that matters. Not really. I mean, we run these 8th mile and quarter mile. Some of the guys that had gone to the larger tire didn't really report that it was a net gain in terms of traction. It's not as much of a footprint gain as you might think. Start saying engine not on, no AC compressor working. True that. Ken saying Ford may have learned what the Japanese car companies have been doing, always improving. That's right. And that's one of the things too, is they always are improving in one way, shape, or form. And they never rested on their laurels. It's a good point. Wolf brings up a really good point. This has got to be the only time in history that a very old platform is getting scrapped, even when it's a massive seller, for sure. And that's the thing. I mean, Challenger sales are just through the roof, and it's not because they're going away. This isn't a, oh my God, it's going away, we got to buy more Challengers. No, man, Challenger has been a strong seller, and for good reason. And here's the thing. Look, you will never out Mustang the Mustang, which is great. That wasn't Challenger's mission statement. That what Challenger did so well is that it was the anti-Mustang. It was big where the Mustang is smaller. It had a big V8 where the Mustang had a small, very high winding V8. It was large and comfortable where the Mustang is tight and in fit. It was everything that the Mustang didn't have to be, and the Challenger did everything that the Mustang couldn't do. It was a very good yin and yang relationship, with the Camaro just trying to poke in here and there, and it didn't do the Mustang stuff as good as the Mustang, and it just didn't do the Challenger stuff as well as the Challenger. So it was the odd man out, unfortunately. Great car, it just bad timing. But let's see. Oh, man, I blasted right past you guys. Sorry about that. Donnie saying, honestly, I was only leaning 315/50 because it fits the wheel well a little bit more, but I didn't want to overdo it. It's not really an overdo it thing, but I will say this, Donnie, just remember that, actually, and I'm running 305s. I'm sorry, I'm running 305/45, not 315. The which I think you said 305/45. Yeah, so the 315 back there, you may have to do some massaging where you won't have to with most of the wheels that you would run a 305/45 on the back of those cars. You may have to do a little bit of work on that inner fender. In fact, I'm positive you will. You really don't need it. It is a little bit of overkill back there. Sovereign's liking Toyota. They keep making good stuff. Yeah, they do. Saying, I bet we see a Hurricane 6 Challenger. That's a little bit too much of a compromise for me, unfortunately. I would prefer that the car really is rolling on its own platform, if that's even a possibility. Okay, so maybe it's a modified LX platform, but it's just a reduced, something. It needs to be different enough to just not be the same thing with an engine swap. That's my hope. And again, I know that is probably wishful thinking because Roadkill Nights in the year 2023 is handing out Hurricane crate motors, and they will probably be put in a bunch of Challengers. I don't know how they're going to get it to fit, but I also don't know the dimensions of the thing. It might fit in the engine compartment just fine. It's just that the LX has got a abnormally small engine compartment for the size of the thing. So anyway, get back over. Michael's saying his Jeep has start stop. If you have the air conditioner on, it bypasses it so the AC still works. And I live in Phoenix, so basically the air conditioner is on all the time. I would love for that to have been the case with my Ram because mine, if the temperature is above 90, what is it? Is it 91 degrees? Then it will, the computer itself deactivates and it won't let it do the start stop thing. But if it's not 91, whatever the magic temperature is, it will absolutely do the start stop with the AC on. And I was hoping that turning the AC on would defeat it, and it doesn't. And I think I would need to try this, but if I'm not mistaken, even the act of turning the AC on wouldn't kick the truck on. Someone's saying, I bet we'll see a lighter, smaller Challenger. Maybe. Someone's saying the Challenger could come back all-wheel drive using the Hurricane. I don't know. Doubtful that it would be all-wheel drive, though. Dodging demons with a Hellcat. Wolf saying, I bought a red eye because I noticed every successful YouTuber demands having one, even when they have three or more times the price in their stable. So that's one of the things about any of the Hellcat variants, to be honest with you. At the end of any conversation is you will find a Hellcat. You will find a red eye. You will find one of the supercharged Hemi variants, Hellcat variants. And it will be the yardstick for a long time. And it has been the yardstick for a long time for guys to basically say, if you can beat a Hellcat, you've got a really fast car. Ooh, it beats a Hellcat. It's like somehow or another instant street cred. But the Hellcat from just being just an overall capable, cool car is no other car can touch it. I mean, name me one that can. Maybe there's a BMW or a Mercedes out there that can come close. But I guess the point that I'm making is that there's not another car that can run 10s from the factory with a sticky tire and do it repeatedly for years on end and be able to get 22, 23, 4, 5 miles per gallon on the highway and be comfortable on long road trips. I mean, the more you add to the list of requirements, the further away that what I mean by that is the more you add to the list of requirements that another car has to have to match the performance envelope, whether it's fuel economy, comfort is the performance envelope, performance is the performance envelope, whatever that performance metric is, the further and further away the Hellcat gets from a car that you would compare it to. So, yeah, it's a, that's the reason why so many guys like them. They're saying, look, you can have a lot of different cars, but you'll pick up the first car that you grab the keys to will be the Hellcat. Oh, Donnie say, I appreciate the comments on the tire size. Sure, man, anytime. As Don Summer saying, always remember the Hellcat for sure. Definitely one for the history books, no doubt about it. But yeah, guys, I mean, getting back to the original topic though on the EVs, man, I mean, if we can get Dodge to stop being so coy, it's like I say, it's a bad look overall. And, come out with whatever the seventh car is. At this stage, does anybody even care? Do something with the Banshee, just release the thing, get it out into the world. Most importantly, though, do something cool for the internal combustion guys. If Dodge does nothing else, and again, the EV thing it's that fad, and I use that word deliberately. When the EV fad comes and goes, Dodge needs to have something for the everyman. Dodge needs to have something for the working folks that are out there, not those that have $100,000+ to spend on a curiosity. You guys have heard me say that before. Dodge needs to have the Conquest again. If they're going to be laying everything out on this Hurricane inline six, bring back something cool that had an engine. Like the Conquest was just a big 4-cylinder. It really needed an inline six. Bring back something cool, bring back something interesting, a nameplate that you can get behind. Bring that to market, please, so that the rest of us will have something to look forward to and to talk about. Because I can promise you, nobody talks about the Plaid, right? Nobody is interested in whatever the latest Tesla thing is. And the reason why nobody's interested in it is because, again, it's a one-trick pony. If all you ever do is sell a performance envelope, but deliver everything else that's attached to it as subpar, and then charge $150,000 for what is in essence an electric motor, battery, seats, and that's it. Man, that's tough it's tough. It's a hard sell, especially for folks that are struggling to just buy a normal car, $30,000, $40,000 car. Folks are struggling to make those payments. And then you want to throw a Dodge name on something that's $100,000+ that's got all the negative connotations that an EV can have for some folks, and all the concerns, the legitimate concerns that people have in terms of, well, safety, kind of makes you wonder. So anyway, guys, with that, we are coming up on just the other side of an hour, so I've got to check out. But what I do want to say is thank y'all very much for all the support. Let me get back up here real quick. I don't want to forget anybody. But Gary, Michael, thank y'all very much. Looks like I caught everybody on the live. But Gary, Michael, thank y'all very much for the support, guys. I truly appreciate it. Means a ton to me. But with that, guys, I got to wrap it up. So get out there and do something cool for somebody. Chances are they need it way more than you know. We'll catch y'all on the next one, guys. That is a wrap. Thanks again. Adios.